The Joe Rogan Experience.
So this was also part of what Bob was saying when he was working back engineering these things, is that the way they were doing science was not compatible with technological innovation. That they weren't allowed to communicate, and it doesn't get done with one geeked out nerdy propulsions expert who you fucking
Definitely
fly
not
over
that
there
guy
and go,
who
hey,
goes
figure
still-
this out.
Yeah, I mean, Bob has said it many times, and probably to you too, Joe, that he shouldn't have been hired for that. They should have had better people for
They
it.
probably didn't know what to do.
Oh,
It sounds like, is that, I mean, I would imagine if I, as I am, someone who doesn't understand any of that stuff, and I'm trying to figure out who to hire, like where do you go? How do you do this? How do you scan the right? How do you know who's going to shut the fuck up? How do you get them to do it? How do you explain what the job is? How do you get them to accept the fact that you might get picked up at 10 p.m. and you have to tell your wife you're going somewhere, and then you can't even tell her where you're going. You're just going to fly to this fucking hidden Air Force base that everyone denies actually exists. We have to remember that. Like, we all know Area 51 existed. In 1989, when Bob Lazar was talking about Area 51, it was officially denied. They pretended it did not exist. So they were flying him for sure to this place that did not exist.
That's right.
And all the stuff with his background in the Los Alamos labs, how he's on the employee roster. Like, I mean, there's enough of his story now that seems to corroborate with all the things we're seeing, that I think people that were skeptical should really go back and watch that documentary again. Just go. Your documentary is fantastic. It's really good too, because it was that of the podcast we did with him was a great opportunity to let him just expand on these things. And man, it doesn't seem like bullshit. And that's what's scary. What's crazy is if this guy's actually telling the truth and they're just spinning their wheels out there in the desert with these fucking UFOs trying to figure out what they are, and they don't get anywhere.
Everyone that we have talked to that's had some involvement with those programs, and we have talked to other people, all say the same thing, is that the excessive secrecy, it's so compartmentalized, so few people get to look at it and work on it, that they've made no progress. Every couple of years, they take it back out, give some other people a chance to look at it, analyze it, try to take a crack at it, and then they put it back and stash it back in a hangar somewhere. In a sense, I think Bob Lazar might have been the perfect guy. Maybe not the most qualified scientist in the world, but obviously a bright guy who thinks outside the box and someone they could discredit.
Yeah.
They feed him a bunch of stuff in these briefing documents that make no sense or are hard to believe. Aliens see us as containers of souls. They created Jesus, things of that sort. And figuring he'll maybe spill it to John Lear or somebody like me,
right?
And then you could discredit him, and
yeah.
He certainly was easy enough to go after.
Well, that's a tactic, right? You give out credible information along with a bunch of bullshit, and that person will say the bullshit, and then you could easily discredit them.
But that kind of secrecy, and they're not making the kind of progress that otherwise, if it was an open investigation and they have a lot of big brainiacs who are tackling it, that they've never allowed it to happen. We hear that all the time, that they still have not made progress because of the excessive secrecy on it.
And also the material science. That's the other thing. Like I gave you that example of graphene, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do not have the ability to perfectly atomically print alloys in zero gravity yet, like here on Earth, right? So some of these materials, we are told, are so far advanced, we can't even begin to replicate the material science necessary.
Now, let me stop you there. You're talking about materials that we've actually collected.
Yes.
So there have been examinations on materials that defy what we understand now about metallurgy, right?
They're like adjusted atom by atom, like layers of an atom. We can't do that stuff. We can't do that. Or maybe we can in some advanced lab.
We will one day. I'm an optimist.
And who has this?
Government has it. Military has it. Lockheed, big aerospace companies like that have it. There are some pieces in private hands. Gary Nolan has some. Jacques Vallée has a couple of pieces.
Right. Some people, have been in position to try to acquire this. So there are some companies, right, that would love to get their hands on these, and they're actually actively bidding to do that. George has interviewed a president of one company that was really seeking those metamaterials to see if they can make an advancement on it. They're a great company. They want a UFO, baby. They want to study it. But I don't know.
One of the things that I had read recently, someone was speculating that when Boblazar went to look at it, he said it seemed as if it was made out of one piece. Like it just didn't make any sense.
Like it was made out of a mold.
Right. But now we know about 3D printing.
Yeah.
And this person was speculating that perhaps this is, now that we know that we can do things like that, you know, and now they can have an advanced version of that to make these crafts out of these spectacular alloys.
Yeah, when Bob plays his life in reverse a little bit, he's like, I wish I knew then what I knew now. He would have paid more attention to stuff. The only thing that made sense to him was the honeycomb hatch. Like, this is the only thing on the craft that he said he saw that made like rational sense. It was this retractable hatch on the floor level that looked like honeycomb, and you could like literally pull it with your finger and it just collapsed in on itself, but it was really strong and structurally, like you could stand on it when it was, you know, closed up. And he's like, that's the only thing in that craft that my mind could see as like ingenuity that I could understand. Everything else, like you said, he thought first he said injection mold, and here we are in 2024 now it is, and he's like, is it 2024? 2023? You know, don't even start, dude. Don't even start. I'm in the future. You know, that it's like, yeah.
I'm just hoping. I want to get there quick so it all comes out.
Just like my brain, man. So anyway, yeah, that we could atomically print something one day like that would be the way it appears you could make it.